All right, are we ready to talk all things real world, road rules, the challenge, favorite cast members, maybe MTV, and also how somebody started a podcast? I don't know when you started, but I want to know, and how you became so quick and easily basically the go to person for a lot of the real world and road rulers throughout the years. We have Mike Lewis here today. Mike, how are you doing? And when and where did you start your podcast? Because it seems like from 0 to 100. Does it feel that way on your end too?
Honestly, sometimes 2 years, which is how long I've been doing it, kind of feels like 2 minutes. And other times it feels like 22 years since I've been doing this stuff. So, in that aspect, I would say the 0 to 100 analogy kind of does correlate here. Um, but first off, I just want to thank you for having me on. You and I have spoken a bit over the past few months, and you've been very supportive of some of my content. So I thought it would be cool to hop on your show. But as far as when I started, I'll take you back a ways. So I want to say about 2 years ago, towards maybe about a month into COVID, I started this. But I would say like the seeds were planted on my birthday a month and a half prior. And for those who have checked out my episode with Brad, I had told him that the catalyst for me starting this was a cameo that I had gotten for him from my birthday. And he gave a lot of pieces of advice in that kind of lit a fire under me. And growing up, I would say that everybody's like dream and fantasy was like, I want to do YouTube. I want to do YouTube. I want to be a YouTuber. That's just what it
Mhm.
was with like my generation, I guess. So challenge, real world, and like just podcasting in general was never really my like goal or intention as much as it was content creation. So I didn't know what my niche was going to be, but I just knew that I wanted one. So I would say when I started, I was just bouncing all these ideas off the wall of like starting a channel and doing like social experiments and then like occasionally like interviewing people. And then I would say I had a few challenge people on. And then from there, I noticed that there was more of an audience for it than I thought. Like, I really was naive and underestimated how hungry and loyal and just dedicated that real world and challenge fans were. I didn't realize how deep and how much of like a niche it was until I would say about a month and a half into when I noticed like there's actually an audience for this. So then from there, I just reached out to some people. I was in some cases surprised to see like who was willing to come on. And then I guess, it did kind of fast track from there. Um, but honestly, it was like a blink and you miss it type of thing for me. At first you see it and then it just starts to take off. But now, like right now, I just can't even pinpoint like how it got from point A to one B. But I'm definitely, grateful for the people I've met and the opportunities and everything that's come from it.
The one thing that's most interesting, and you do your homework, so when I say this with support.
Mhm.
You are younger, so it's
Yeah.
odd, for somebody like me. I was born in the '80s, so watching Real World, the original season, I was like maybe 12 years old, 13 years old, but you weren't. So it's kind of an amazing job that you've done. And I don't know if you do more research because you were a little bit younger. Like these shows were, you weren't born really, and my generation, we were getting our life watching this stuff. It was very compelling to us. How do you think you do such a good job at maintaining your youth and being, newer to all this, but then still getting the credibility from the cast members? Because that was one thing that I noticed from your show. They always like come now and kind of like not taunt you, but they're like, "Oh, I've heard about a Mike Lewis interview." Like it's a crazy thing to think at one point you were barely starting off, getting challenge contestants to come through, and now there are so many real worlders and road rulers who now know about you and know about your interview style and support you. That's pretty crazy to be so young and never have really like lived through it.
Yeah. I mean, at first, I, was leaning into kind of the uphill battle that it would be, I felt going into this. I think that I mean, you could look at it in a double edged sword type of way, but in my personal view, I feel like age may work against you in some cases. So I knew in that regard that I might have had it a little tougher than some others. But I mean, clearly, it's exceeded what I initially expected. I figured, maybe my age would work against me. I'm fortunate that, as of now, it hasn't yet. But I have leaned into my age in the aspect of like, yeah, I didn't grow up watching certain seasons. Like, I'm not naive to the fact to say that I grew up watching the very first Real World season. Obviously, that wouldn't be the case. But I think that, through research, because obviously that's something that has to be required when talking to people that I didn't watch growing up. I think that that research is required. And I think that with some of my questions and like research, if the guests can tell that I did my research, then I guess maybe they can appreciate the fact that I came prepared with my homework done. Um, but yeah, like you said, it does to the casual eye, I can definitely see how that could be surprising to like like to see that, like, you know
No,
what I mean? Like, it is very surprising. I
I think
totally
it's
get it.
because I, of course, clocked it immediately. He's younger, but what it was for me was it was stating that you had done the research to such a degree because you almost had to compensate for maybe not being in on watching it regularly. But think about this. Think about this one idea. You ever have to commute somewhere? If you
Yeah.
got a short commute, you're always late. If you got a 45-minute commute, you're always early. It's that same dynamic. Like, because you didn't see the shows live, you maybe have a different research oriented base when you ask the questions. But they've been enjoying it. They've been really loving it, and you've done really well. Do you have a couple cast members from both the challenge, real world that you have really enjoyed talking to and have become some of your favorites at this point?
I've got a couple. Some like the Kara Khan interview from a few weeks ago. That was a ton of fun. Another case of obviously wasn't I was actually born the year that came out. That's funny. So that was one that surprised me in terms of like the reception and everything. Sometimes when you yourself didn't live out a show like while it came out live, you maybe don't anticipate maybe it being like as talked about as another one because maybe so and so didn't do a show or a challenge, so to speak. But I was very surprised with the reception on that one, just for an example. But as far as like people that I really enjoyed talking to, um, Tina's really cool. I'm very lucky to have gotten to have her on a handful of times. She's very fun to talk to. Um, and then honestly, I like the people that aren't talked about enough or aren't like so out there. You know what
The
I
ones
mean?
who
Like,
kind of left the scene or whatever, which is a lot of
yeah,
them because a lot of them are getting older, so your perspective isn't challenge questions anymore. It's like real life stuff, and some of them are going through real life things.
yeah. Like for example, like a Mark Long, right? Like obviously he's very out there. Don't get me wrong. Like talking to him, I could have talked to him for 5 hours. You know what I mean? But contrasting him with say like a Joe from Real World San Francisco, who is obviously not out there at all, is two very different contrasts. But that was something that I think initially piqued my interest at first was talking to the ones that aren't out there first. I think that was kind of where I wanted to go as far as talking to ones that aren't, you know, posting what they're eating for breakfast every morning or like,
Yeah.
you know
Well,
what I
you get
mean?
to discover the story. Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I mean, not just because you did the interview, but I was telling you prior before you did it that one of the cast members that always just, I mean, she was a one and done, not maybe by her accord, maybe she, had a better life doing other things, but Kara Khan from Chicago was so like one of my favorites. She was so instrumental in me just like watching the show. I think I was very close in age. They were like a little bit older. So there was this like, oh, when I grow up, and I think I was out of high school about this time. She just she looked like somebody I wanted to hang out with, and she said all the right things, and it was like just like a welcome to the world like type of thing. And of course, their season was quite challenging with the particular instance that they had to have the television on for, which we all know what that was.
Yeah.
But I thought you did good with her, and she's exactly what you're talking about. Somebody who has not been in the public eye for a long time, really. And so you just shoot the shit and it becomes a really fun interview. So you're doing great at that.
Yeah, it's
Did you
fun to
want?
talk. Oh no, sorry.
No, go ahead. It's fun to talk to what?
It's fun to talk to like the normal, like just people, you know what I mean? And then I guess like that's weird to say like normal people, but you get what I mean. Like just
Yeah.
someone that's not in the current scheme of what's going on. Like so you're essentially just talking to, in a sense, a stranger at that point that happened
Yeah.
to go and do something cool at something and at some point in their life. You know what I mean?
Well, my list of real worlders isn't as big, although I've been in radio for years, so I have interviewed other people. But real worlders, not as much. But I did get my first interview, and that was with Cyrus, and that was recently actually. So that was quite fun. He talked about, the experience with Sean Duffy and those types of things that are kind of challenging, and the way of the world, and if he wanted to do a real world homecoming. So that was my first interview with a real worlder, which I thought was fun. I kind of took from the book of Mike Lewis there. Anyhow, I wanted to ask you, do you agree with me? And we'll talk about challenge too, because I know you're a big
Mhm.
challenge fan as
Yeah.
well. Are you more of a challenge fan than real world? Or it seems like you get a little more excited at the challenge, which a lot of people are loving the show. And now to have challenge, 38's coming.
Yeah.
All Stars is like this whole nother thing. And even the one on CBS is going to be this new exciting experience. The way the challenge has grown so recently is quite amazing.
I will say that as far as like going back and watching, like, let's just say going back and watching like Cutthroat, for example, is a much more smooth watching process for me than say going back and watching like a real world Key West, if that makes sense. So I would definitely say that you're right in that aspect, that I do get a little more excited when it comes to the challenge stuff. And then all around, like more so probably a challenge fan. But on the contrary, I will say that in terms of like the new stuff that's coming out, I thoroughly enjoy Homecoming better than I enjoy All Stars at this current juncture. I've had a much better enjoyment with the Real World New Orleans Homecoming than I've had All Stars. And that's not to say All Stars is like bad, but I'm just saying like I'm just thoroughly impressed with the product that's been put out as far as the homecomings go. So I would say spin-offs, Homecoming, but the old stuff, Challenge.
um, you and everybody on Homecoming, New
Yeah,
Orleans
it's
specifically.
good. It's just
I watched the
objectively
first
good.
one. I love New York. I wish Eric Nice would have been more involved, but COVID or
Mhm.
whatnot. I almost wish they could have altered the scheduling, but it is what it is.
You would think
Uh,
so for a guy like him.
Yes, LA Venice I liked. However, I thought it was a bit off balance because I love Tammy Roman, watched her on Basketball Wives and, seen all the things she's done in her career and she's still doing. So I felt like it was a really good season. It had all the stuff, it had all the excitement, but it didn't have it wasn't divided evenly. Like in other words, and I hate to say this, I think Tammy Roman should have got paid double. It's nothing that's not against the cast. It's just she's just so polarizingly more of an entertaining person on the camera. And I don't like to watch a show where it's that much from the great Tammy, but you're not learning anything from John. You interviewed John. What do you
Yeah.
think of him? Do you think he's kind of holding out when he films these shows because he's kind of putting his where he has to go back to his job? And I think that's a challenge that a lot of these cast members have is now they're older, so they have a little bit more responsibility. They don't want to really act too wild on the camera for Homecoming, huh?
Honestly, I'm fortunate enough. John's probably one of the people out of like all this stuff that I've maintained like a pretty nice relationship with, like as far as like, continued sustained relationships go. Um, so having gotten to know him more, honestly, I really think that there's no holding out, and this is actually the guy that we see. Like, I just genuinely feel like what we see of him on screen is actually who he is. And as crazy as that is to sound, and as much of like just a straightforward answer as that is, from the John that I've spoken to, like off, recording and everything, like what we saw on screen is exactly who he is. And I don't think it's him holding out for anything. I just think what we see is what we get of him.
Yeah. Well, in that case, it is good. In that case, it's good because we only see one type of person on television usually. So if John is completely different and it's an authentic thing, then that's great. Even the fact that everyone is aged a little older, I
Mhm.
like that too. you don't see anyone outside of 35 years old. That's like a dinosaur usually. So the real world homecoming has sort of opened that up, and I really do like that. I'll ask you a couple homecoming questions along the way,
Mhm.
kind of like which cast would you like to do? Would you like to see in a homecoming? But I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to start off a little messy. I want to do. You see, Mike. Me and my brother do the real world. I'm sorry, the Challenge All Stars recap. So we've done season 1, 2, and now 3. And one thing my brother will always notice is that I always have an issue with this particular cast. And so it led me to tell you that I wanted to say, and I want to get your opinion. This to me was the most overrated real world cast. Pretty much one of the most overrated. You hear them a lot. I don't think they're that great. And let me show you a photo, and we'll talk.
I knew it.
Yeah, I'm referring to what was so hyped up to be such a big season. They were in Austin, especially at a time that Austin was sort of, it's always bubbling up, but at the time it was, this new thing, or not really new, but South by Southwest. It was a time. And this cast was supposed to be so great. And I really look at them and I'm like, it's like we're missing something. We're missing some cast member. I don't know. What are your thoughts about Austin? And I guess conversely to that, it's like Nehemiah, Wes, and Melinda are current challenge all-star members. And again, that's where my brother teases me and says, "Oh, you happen to never like those cast members." And it turns out I didn't like the season either. What do you think?
Yeah, I have heard that like when this thing first came out, it had like a Vegas type of aura to it with how like the press handled it. I've heard that like Danny and Melinda, because they went on those like the cast used to go on the bar appearances and like all that stuff back then. I heard that like Danny and Melinda were so like almost like a Kanye Beyonce type of, or Beyonce Jay-Z
Wow.
type of
Breaking news again. Yes.
yeah,
Um,
type of thing as far as like couples go coming off of that show. And even when I held my March Madness, they made it to the finals before losing to Vegas. So I was, obviously that speaks volumes. But as far as like my personal opinion on like their cast and like their season, I understand both arguments of why it could be overrated and properly rated. I think that it was remembered mostly due in part to the Danny and Melinda stuff and just Danny's story in general. And then
mhm,
Wes and Johanna's obviously challenge, I think, dynamic plays a
mhm.
part in why that's remembered so heavily, I think. And you notice that with some of the other casts too, like what they go on to do on the challenge ultimately kind of helps their real world season age better than maybe it really was. Like I think Key West is also kind of falling under that category as well. So people sometimes I think the lines get blurred between a good real world season and just whose name or face is more recognizable, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that like Austin was a bad season, but I do get where you're coming from, as far as like something does feel kind of lacking. But you know, I wouldn't mind the I wouldn't mind the homecoming though, just because I
Yeah.
would
No,
interview
it,
Danny
it
personally.
doesn't. Oh, you want to interview
I
Danny?
would love to interview Danny.
Um, I didn't mean to drag you into the mess, but I was like, if I'm going to do this show, I'm going to keep it blunt and say who I think is the top tier people. Kara, Chicago, I like. But there was something about Austin, and I feel like your audience specifically knows everything about the challenge and the real world seasons. That I was like, oh, you're a perfect person to talk to and ask the question. I don't know. Anyone else agree with me?
I mean, Danny's
Austin?
Danny's
Oh,
story was like very good, but that was like I guess where it ended.
well, here's what I think would happen. It came after Philadelphia, which wasn't a bad season, but I don't think Philadelphia did very well. So I
Mhm.
think MTV, in terms of promotion, as you were saying, I think they really hyped up this season. Like, oh, don't you worry, we got Austin, we got another great season. I don't know the numbers of Philadelphia. I actually don't have a problem with Philadelphia. I actually auditioned for Philadelphia, made it
Yeah.
round 1 or 2 or whatever it was. The round where you write like 25 Q&As and you have to send in a tape. I made it to that round. So Philly was always in my heart. But after Philly, I don't think Philly did that well ratings wise. I don't think. Maybe you can find out at some point. So Austin coming right after that, it felt like MTV was like, "Don't you worry, we got a good cast," and it's Austin, the most exciting musical town. And then I was like, "What is this shit?" So they may not be that bad, but I was let down. You know?
They didn't wait too long to release Austin either. I think the turnaround was very fast from Philly to Austin. Like they just wanted Philly to be over with at that point.
And I don't
It
think
seemed
Philly
like.
was that bad. I do think Philly maybe could have switched out like Mel, like she maybe didn't bring a lot to the table, but I don't think Philly was terrible. Philly had potential. It really, and if you think about it now, MJ's on the All Stars, Karama's got a talk show coming. Like it
Landon.
was yeah, it was Landon was one of the best challenge cast members.
Yeah.
So you have some great people there for sure. Um I
Sarah from that show, I thought was correct. You could, correct me with like, your thoughts, but like I thought that like
my terrible
Sarah,
opinions.
yeah, this is one of my hot takes, but like I thought that Sarah was like the star of their show.
She started too hard though, because I think in her casting special she said, "Oh, no one's gonna even know about Trishelle after me." When you do that whole thing where you like almost, I don't want to call it desperately trying to get casted, but it's like one of those
Oh,
things where you say something so specific,
it's like
it
picking a
just,
fight with somebody, hoping that they're your rival on a season. You get paired up with
I
them.
guess so. And at
Yeah.
that time Trishelle was so popular, but
Hmm.
Sarah was interesting. I did a rewatch recently, and I'm telling you, that season wasn't as bad as people think that it was. Sarah specifically, she had a lot going on. She was a little bit more on the spoiled side. But that's also, sometime in upbringing, things like that happen, and her mother was going through some stuff. It was a season. I actually really enjoyed it. The Karamo storyline was great too. There was some really interesting things with Karamo and MJ. How many times does it happen to you? How many times does it happen to you in terms of the bar, the situation that had happened? It was not bad. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm gonna let you tell me what homecomings you would want to pitch if you were running shit. Okay, but I'm gonna say, and I just talked to Cyrus. He would like to do Boston, so that's a good choice. A season that I thought was really really good and doesn't get talked about too much, but I think would come together nicely is San
There
Diego.
you go.
Now, obviously, sadly, Frankie is no longer. She has passed, but I think the cast is quite unique. Um, in terms of Jamie and the success she has, now as an actress, she's married to Brian Greenberg. I think Brad, of course, was interesting then. He is on the challenge. Cameron, she was on Southern Charm for all those years. And I don't know too much about the rest of them, but I feel like everyone, was great while the season aired. The only question, and you might know more about this, I feel like we're hearing rumblings of Robin not doing so well.
Right.
Is that something that you've heard?
Yeah. That's something I've actually very much so been aware of. As without getting like too bogged down on the details, as far as like what I know, I don't think at the current juncture that would be feasible to have her on the show at the current juncture. Now that's not to say like in the future, um, if what's being said gets better, then maybe that could be a possibility in the future. But right now, it would be a very uphill battle, I would say, in terms of getting that off the ground moving.
Then in that case, we don't want to see it because, everyone taking care of themselves is number one. Well, okay, then I'll put the question on you. Who is a cast that you would like to see? Obviously, it appeared that there was a three order for the homecoming, which is sort of wrapping up with New Orleans.
Hmm.
I don't know the plans, Paramount and Viacom and everything. Who would you like to see as a cast back together?
So I'll throw a couple on the table here, and in my personal opinion, I think that this is a season that people look on very fondly, and at the time period, from what I've gathered, was very popular, but maybe has fallen through the cracks due to not being on Paramount, and then their cast being pretty much off the grid in a sense.
Oh, is it Miami?
It's Miami, and here's the kicker: from talking to Flora and Cynthia, everybody amongst themselves has talked. They are all seven down for it, but
Oh,
they
that'd
just
be good.
haven't gotten the call for it, from what it appears. Um, Now, in that being said, I think that that's the most likely route for 4. If you want my honest opinion, I think that if you were to pick up the phone right now, the producers, and send phone calls around to each cast to see which of them answer first, like that they would go, that is most likely the route. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't know this to be fact. So for anybody watching, do not take what I say literally. This is just an opinion. And I don't know this for a fact. But in my personal opinion, if I'm playing devil's advocate, I think that the reason why Miami hasn't been maybe talked about yet or fully approached about it yet is because MTV might not, or Paramount might not feel like their season is marketable enough. Because when you look at the other shows, you're very easily able to pinpoint, like, there you go. That's going to be the person we're putting on our billboard. This is going to be who we're like. You've got Tammy for LA and Beth even,
Yeah.
and a lot of controversy there that's carried over onto challenges and stuff. And then you've got Eric Nice on New York. Heather B is very much in the limelight still. And then on this recent season, I mean, Julie went on to do how many challenges? Melissa is very marketable. Danny was very popular coming off that show. You had tons of, what people would call like, pillars. And that's not to say that I don't feel like there's pillars on Miami, because I think, and I love Cynthia. She's one of my favorite people I've talked to. I think Dan's a very good cast member. Flora's entertaining. And then I think you've got other people like Melissa, who we don't know what she's doing. She was very pivotal on that show. I think you've got other interesting people like Joe. And then, Mike. There's a lot of things that could be talked about on that from rewatching it that I think, something that needs to be tapped into. And that's just one. And I feel like it's very likely if they just pull the trigger on it.
I wish that wouldn't be a hindrance, but maybe it is. They don't have a "come and be my baby tonight" moment, really, as good as the cast was. The only thing with Miami is, do you really need that type of moment, or that type of exposure to this day? Like Tammy Roman's always still been on TV, as you were saying, and all these things. Miami's such a great city. It just feels like it still would work, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I think another good one, and I don't know like what their thought process is as far as like going backwards, because they skipped over, obviously, they went straight from 2 to 9. San Francisco, I can just say right now, that's most likely not going to be revisited. If you want my honest opinion, I think that, yeah.
It feels so hopeful if you like blink.
I would have to put producers in touch with Joe.
It's for which season?
For San Francisco.
Oh,
I'm joking.
It seems it's just too challenging. I mean, you can't really trust Puck, really. So there's a lot of that.
Pedro is obviously not with us, unfortunately, either.
Did you see that Joe went in, but it was almost Mark Long who went into that season?
I did. I talked about that with both of them.
That is so interesting to me. So that really makes him the Godfather, because he was almost going to be a real worlder, or could have been.
Yeah.
It was just they didn't choose him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he showed them.
Yeah.
It's a cast that I would like it to work, and in terms of like the money that's being thrown at them, if this was the next cast, I feel like let's say you're Judd and you want to like preserve Pedro's legacy. It's so hard to do, because you think, well, for one, Rachel and her stance, but that is what it is. With Puck, like, what is he willing to do messy wise? And I think there's certain times where like money is just not going to be enough. Contractually, you're going to be having to exchange energy with somebody who could be a loose cannon, and it's just probably not a good move. It sucks, because rewatching that series is a time capsule for sure. I mean, what Puck did for that show, that literally was the moment that the president of the time, Bill Clinton, mentioned these harsh realities, and what Pedro was doing advocacy wise. I get chills just even like rethinking of that era. And I love the real world in that era, where they, for the most part, still lived a normal life, still chased their own dreams. Judd was a cartoonist, Mohammed was a rapper. Everyone had their own thing. Puck was I don't know what he was, a drinker. But it just felt more organic in the sense that now they're just placed in the house to like party and fight. So
Yeah, that is
uh,
essentially what it is now. You
yeah.
hit it right on the head.
Well, not now. There is no now anymore. Do you think Real World will come back?
Do I think it'll come back? You mean like a normal real world, like with new people?
Like Seattle was the last season, then they have the Facebook season in Atlanta. Do you think something like that will come back, or do they need to do a gimmick or something unique to draw people in? I think that was the beginning of the end because the season started to go down when they did skeletons, when they did go big or go home. That's when the show became uninteresting. I think.
You could look at it two ways. I actually heard that Explosion was supposed to be the last one, and like because it did well, like in the ratings, like I'm pretty sure they went on Rolling Stones and stuff. And that's what ensured them more seasons. Honestly, Skeletons, I get like with the party aspect and how the genre had taken a change. I didn't mind that one. I think it really started to like just this is done was Go Big or Go Home and Bad Blood are the two seasons where it just this
Yeah,
thing is over and there's no coming back. And then Atlanta was just like I don't know what that I didn't watch that. Like I haven't watched a single episode of that. I could say that safely.
I think I tried a couple. It's on Facebook. It's just a limited option to watch. It's maybe young and fresh for some generation, but not for everybody. Um, I think I didn't like Skeletons because I get defensive over the original Chicago. I really think that they should get an opportunity at a homecoming. When you talk with Kara, did you get a sense that she would ever want to touch any of this again?
Yeah, she would. She would. She's not in a jump to do it, but if the call comes, she would do it. I just don't. And I feel like she could even talk Kyle into doing it too. I
Yeah.
really think she can. Um, Again, there's one objective standing in the way of that happening, and it just so happens that that one objective is ultimately probably too big of a situation to ensure that season of happening.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Washington Origins. Yeah. And then the stuff that happened on the challenge. Yes. Okay. Moving on. Moving right along. Mike, I got to ask you real quick, and then we're going to get to the challenge. But I got to ask you, in terms of your skill set, 1 to 10, how good do you think you are? And then I have a question to follow. 1 to 10, give it to me. Let's go.
Well, I do like to be objective, but I also do like to bet on myself. But you know, we'll be generous here, and we'll go with a 10.
Okay. I'm going to knock you down 2 points.
All right.
Only because it was whatever you said, I was going to knock you down 2 points. And this is only because he's been doing this for 2 years. He's been talking to challenge cast members we haven't seen in years, road rulers we haven't seen in years. Like I said, they're getting a thrill when they talk to him now. Now they're like, "Hey, Mike, what's up? Oh my God, I heard about your interviews, your interview style." They're praising you before you even start. However, you are slacking, Mike, because you have not talked to the great Coral Gene Smith. And I need to know what the fuck is happening. We need Coral on your show.
Well, I'm gonna spill the tea. Coral and I have had a couple run-ins. She was supposed to be my 100th, which was back in the end of August, but I'm approaching my 150th, and 2 weeks ago we were scheduled. The whole thing, we had a 15-minute phone call 2 days before it was supposed to happen. We spoke hours before. And then I don't know. I still haven't heard back from her. She just didn't show up to our scheduled time. So I don't know. But what I can confirm for those listening, if you're wondering, like if she'll do an all-star show, from speaking to her, that sounds like the ship has sailed. She told me that she turned down because they just don't pay enough. That's flat out. That's why she said she hasn't agreed to come on. Now I can't divulge what the amount was, but because that's personal stuff. But that is the roots of why we have yet to see her on an all-star show, and then why we haven't seen her on my show.
Well, then I've got to chew out Boona Murray. or whoever and knock some notches off their belt too, because you pay Coral what Coral wants. She's so instrumental of that era, and for her not to be seen on the challenge again, if it's a physical thing, and she doesn't want to do it, I think Kara, as much as I like Kara Khan, she's like, yeah, I'm not physical. I don't want to
I
do the
just
challenge. But
Coral
Coral,
Coral's
Coral,
just
Coral
in a
was, and Coral did say famously, "I don't fight. I beat bitches up." I mean, I need Coral back on the show. This is what I need to happen.
Coral's just in a she's in a little bit of a different space. From talking to her, she still said that she's still Coral, but it's taken on a little bit of a different type of Coral these days. She's a mom now. She's working as a doula, so now she's helping other moms with their
Oh,
moms and
nice.
delivering birth. So, she's got a lot of she got a lot on her hands. And
I guess I just wish in this streaming platform generation where it sounds like all the networks are just, thriving for new shows, it makes me think somebody that monumental, fine, don't put her in a challenge because maybe that's a toxic environment. Fine, maybe not even a homecoming because you don't want to be the same Coral, and sometimes reality TV keeps you locked into that same personality, unfortunately. But I find it hard to believe, and this is not a knock on him whatsoever, when you look at that season, back to New York, and Mike has had all the success as the Miz, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but there's a part of my heart that hurts a little that Coral isn't like, making that money. And I was looking at the Boone and Murray website the other day, and I was like, oh, okay, they're producing Mike's show, his reality show with his wife. I mean, somebody at Boone and Murray, make the call. Give us a show about doulas in San Francisco or wherever Coral's at. The thing is, I can see her trepidation possibly for not doing reality if you get locked into one edit, Give her something else. Let's let her grow. She was compelling even when she was sure her stern moments were fun to watch, but she was compelling when she was sweet. She was compelling when she was warm. She was compelling when she was vulnerable, nervous. I want to see it all. And I don't think I'm the only person who's raising their voice and sort of frustrated that if you watch that season live, like I did, you didn't because you were a baby. But if you watched it live, you could never blink your eyes and say, oh, yeah, I bet you in 10 years, 15 years, Mike the Miz is going to be a thing and Coral is going to be, not that her life is not fabulous, but you would think you would see her, years and years ago, continuing on with something. But she's doing something great personal, so maybe that's just the route, So I equally understand.
I hear you, but I mean, I don't know this for fact, but maybe she just didn't want. Maybe she had the chance to potentially parlay. I'm sure if she kept doing challenges and staying there, like something just would have kept going, But some people, like when you're in such a noisy setting for a while, sometimes people appreciate and enjoy like quietness and just normal after a while. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I agree. A trepidation I had with my career in radio is that we used to put in the 9 hours a week, 9 hours a day. Sorry, 9 hours of work in a week. It was insane. No sleeping, all the craziness. And I had no problem with that aspect of work ethic. Now that I'm in your generation, so to speak, and the digital people are winning, and the YouTubers and the TikTokers are winning. Some of them are like 19 years old. I have had a hard time competing at that level, not because of my work ethic, but because I don't like to be present all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like our interview. I like to let's get this interview in. We'll talk shit for 2 hours. We'll have fun. But I also like to cut it off. And I don't like accessibility to me. In order for me to be a good broadcaster and become better and better, I like to cut it off. And so I could totally see that. Like,
I'm with you.
why am I going to do real world all again, homecoming, and then they're going, the same things will start being brought back up. So, anyways, you make a lot of points, but this was an appreciation moment for the great Coral because I know a lot of people enjoyed her, and it's just somewhere's in my heart. I'm like, why don't we see her doing another project? But if it's in her best interest, then great. But
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. Hopefully, I can.
We're counting on
This
you.
is the closest I ever came, so
Yeah.
Third time might be the charm.
We're counting on you. She was a star. She always will be a star, no matter how loud and big personality. We're just interested, personality wise. We're just interested in like the new life and the motherhood and all that stuff. So Coral, come talk to somebody, and MTV, pay her.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's transition into the challenge. Oh, and I have a question for you a little bit later about the real world.
All right.
So TJ Lavin, he is working. He's doing the show. He's doing the All Stars. He's doing the USA version. Another shady question, but I'm just going to do it. If you were to have to cast somebody else to do one of the challenges because TJ was too busy, who would you choose?
To host?
Yep.
Like any show or just flagship or?
Let's just say any show. So, because currently he's doing the flagship, which is season 38, All Stars 3, and then the new one that's coming to CBS. Who would you? I have somebody in mind. Who would you choose?
Honestly, this might be like a surprising pick, but I actually really enjoyed Johnny Mosley as a host.
Oh, okay.
So he would be an option on the table. And if you want to just stick to like maybe like a cast member route, The Miz or Mark Long could be an option.
Okay.
So
that's more where I was going. The Miz did the challenge versus stars thing that they had. He did good, like I said a second ago, because I was praising Coral. I wasn't trying to shit on the Miz, just so you know. 1000%. If TJ is ever busy, I think they need to put in Eric Nies from The Grind.
I was just thinking about him too.
You interviewed him. What did you ask him? What did you talk to him about? How did he feel as far as his experience with Homecoming and not really getting to be with everybody because he had COVID?
I think he's at peace with it all now. You can't undo the past ultimately. I don't know like deep down if he maybe has any like regret or carries maybe bigger emotions than what he displayed when I spoke to him. But just from like what he's told me and just speaking to him, it seems like he's at peace with it now. He doesn't really focus on what has happened. He's more of like a what's present type of guy. He's very zen these days. So he's definitely taken on like a very different lifestyle than what he once did. And I think it's working out well for him. He's he's a healthy guy, So I'm happy to see that he's in a good place. He actually talked about how he got it kind of rough coming off the show. He had the grind stuff for a while, but then once that stopped, he ran into a little bit of a rough patch, with a manager of his that ultimately screwed him over in, a lot of ways. So, he's seen the whole gamut, you know what I mean? From top to bottom and now kind of this middle length, I would say.
Yeah. It's a tricky show. It's a show that catapults you to superstardom. And it's also a line too when that used to happen and there wasn't social media, and now that there is. And just even the ones from earlier, the early seasons, getting paid not a lot, yet you're famous, but that fame can't pay your rent really. And you are trying to get opportunities, but you're almost more of a novelty because you're from the real world where you're not necessarily bookable. Which probably a couple cast members on your show have talked about, but I've certainly heard people say that many a times, especially the early seasons.
Think about it like this. On the Real World, if somebody gets blacked out drunk and like says something, let's just say like racist to like a minority cast member, but if in a movie or a sitcom or anything that involves acting, if that same sequence occurs, then you could just chalk it up to this person's playing a part versus this person is literally playing themselves and just did something belligerent on television. There's like the fine line. So I get it for like, like acting and like entertainment producers, like maybe why they would not have a certain inclination to want to do business with reality stars, it's unfortunate for the ones that aren't being belligerent on reality TV that maybe they're just kind of guilt by association in that aspect. But, I see why it is that way.
I don't even mean just if you've had one of those moments like a Paula Walnuts situation. Yes, hard to bounce back from. She did. But I don't even think that, Mike, and you could relate to this. And you can relate to it because you did say you like to take a break from your show sometimes too. You're very big
Yeah.
into mental health. Um, it's just very awkward. I mean, all of us in our quest with our own YouTube shows or podcasts, we've learned how to do it. But the psychology, is it the psychology? Is that the word? But
Yeah.
behind having to listen to yourself, re-listen to your opinion, re-see, maybe you didn't like the t-shirt you wore, and look at yourself as a product and not a person. I mean, that is minimal compared to what some of these real worlders had to do. And yes, they did choose to do it, but I mean, at the same time, I give such grace to nearly all of them because it's not an easy thing to do.
I think about it too, time to time, because when I have my own type of battle, so to speak, with this, I think about it and I'm like, holy smokes! I can only imagine what so and so has to do with being on like a actual like scale where like a show is playing out for like whoever wants to watch it across the world. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, like when you talked with Kara and she was like, imagine like this Tuesday's coming up or Wednesday or whenever the show is airing, and you know what you're about to see, like and how that could be impacted with family that's watching, elder relatives, work. Like it's enough to make somebody anxious. Again, what they chose to do, but there should also be a mix and that grace between understanding. And again, I think we get that because we do a show,
Yeah.
and like I said, there will be there will be kids, because I'm a little older and I've started working in radio so many years ago, that will run circles around me. And I always say, I mean, I'm playing the long game. And what I mean by that is I have to unplug. I just have to. I cannot be accessible 24/7. And I know this is not about me, but I
Yeah.
think that's just an important practice for all of us. And I think you've done it in a healthy way too, where you're like, okay, last episode, taking a little hiatus. People think that that's crazy. People think, got to post 5 Instagrams a day. And listen, if you're Kim Kardashian and you have it as a business and you have an assistant to post and it's a sponsored ad, I could see it. But if you're not at that level and you're working that quick, there's going to be a burnout. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I stand by that.
No, I'm glad you brought this up because I'm going on about pretty much the better part of 3 weeks that I've just kind of been away. I wanted to do your show, of course, because I've been mainly off social media for the better part of 3 weeks. I was on vacation last 2 weeks.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I wanted to do this obviously, but yeah, exactly what you said. I'm not that guy that's a podcaster, but it's like a glorified fan page that needs to repost what other challengers are up to. That's not been my speed. It's never been my speed. It's not going to be my speed. I consider myself an artist. I put stuff out, and artists need time to, you know, need time to rest.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. You are in charge of the interviews and you want to do a good interview series. You got to duck out. You have to. You have to. You have to. And so many times I struggle with having colleagues understand that. They think I got no heart. I'm like, bitch, I've been doing this since 2002. If anyone knows what the fuck is going on, it's me. But I still have to, because I've had those breakdowns before when I was younger.
Mhm.
Anyways, this is not about us. This is about the real world and real
Yeah.
rules, and we were just kind of observing that by way of some of the challenges that these funny some of the challenges that these cast members have had. But we're not going to feel too sorry for Eric Neese because he did have the nicest set of abs we had ever seen in 1992. So you know what, we can't feel that bad for you. Sorry about it. The end. Okay. Now to the challenge. What is it about the challenge that does excite you? Why do you think it has 38 seasons, and why do you think it's getting bigger and bigger by way of having 3 shows on at once, or 3 shows that are sort of in production?
Well, depending on who you ask, so we'll ask me here. If it was up to me, we would have had the challenge getting bigger and expanding with how they're doing right now back during what I would consider the glory days. Um, I think that it started out as something relatable. The personalities, I would say, through the first 26 seasons really carried the show. I mean, we've seen it take it on basically more of like a sport now, which, some people like, some people don't. But I'd say like the reason as to why it's gotten to 38 seasons is because it started out as something relatable. It started out as people you watch stories unfold. That's why you root for them. That's why you want to see somebody who is, I don't know, swinging from a rope to an objective point do that. Now, with the show, the way it's evolved, I don't want to see an Instagram influencer who I have no idea where they
Yeah.
live, what they've been through, complete that objective. I can go and watch that at like some local like fitness center. Like I don't need to watch it on TV. You know what I mean? I think we enjoyed this show because we almost felt like we can do it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it was relatable. I don't necessarily like or am inclined to watch like more of like a sport element of what it's taken on right now. If I wanted to watch sports, which I am a sport guy, but when I'm watching sports, I come for sports. When I'm coming for reality television, I want to feel like I'm watching reality television mixed with competition, not sport,
Yeah.
but using like a reality gimmick that just doesn't necessarily still exist in my eyes.
Well, I certainly don't feel like them adding all the social media influencers had been good to the show. Um, Trying to cross over Are You the One, which was a show I never watched, but it's in the family. I could kind of see. But it had just gotten away from like what you said. We didn't know who we're rooting for. You got to give us a reason to root for somebody that we like. And I think the Challenge All Stars has balanced that a little bit. It's kind of given us, I want to see new Tina. I want to see evolved Tina. Oh, there goes the pans. She's not evolved that much, Oh, that's what you want to see. And I find it by no means boring because a lot of them are married now, so there's a little bit of an element that is lost, the flirting and stuff. But it's great to see. It's great to see. So I'm a big fan of it. I think the challenge that's going to be the Challenge USA on CBS, I think that will do well also because Big Brother cast members have always been really great. Amazing Race, Love Island, I think it is also. And I'm into the journey. I'm into seeing how it grows. My brother specifically does call it, the fifth sport or whatever. He's big into sports. I'm not at all, and it's just this common ground that we come together because it's very real world ish, but it's also very challenge ish. And I don't know where they can go. The only places I don't need them to continue to go is when they do those episodes or seasons rather, that it's like a spy or a
Oh
undercover mission.
Lord.
The level of corniness and the level of wasted money, possibly, I don't know. I'm not running shit, but the level of money on these special effects that honestly, I'm gonna say it loud, nobody gives a fuck about. It's
I
taking
know I
away from
don't.
it's taken away from the challenge. It's not impressing anybody. So I
No,
would
because it's not real. That's the thing. Like
but
the
Johnny
way this
Bananas is
show
not a
was brought
spy.
up on, it's just not relatable. Like nobody really believes that these people are spy agents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Save the money for the explosions and you find a show for Coral.
yeah, exactly.
There's your budget. Figured it out. There you go. Hire Ronnie. Daggone it. I could figure this shit out. Um, where do you want to go within your program? You started it. Were you nervous to start it? And it sort of went, but where would you like it to go?
I'm open to like all avenues that this can go or continue to go to. Um, I don't necessarily have like a set goal in mind as far as like where I want it to go. I know like in my personal life that I'm still wrapping up school, and I know that I want to be a broadcaster or a commentator, and that is a bridge that I fully intend on getting to. Um, but we'll cross when the time comes. But I guess for the time being with this, when the time's right, I'll probably make my way back into doing this again.
Okay.
I took the last 3 weeks off, um, and I'm just focused on being the best Mike Lewis. I don't really watch or listen to much noise, so to speak, of like what others are up to. I like to stay in my own lane, stay grounded, um, so that way I can put forth the best me. You know what I mean? I don't like to. I don't like to like compare myself to others.
Yeah.
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's a nightmare. Don't do that. Two questions and we can wrap up. You are from New Jersey, but you've got a New York City background. So tell me, do you want to ultimately be living like in the heart of New York City? And the second question is, you aren't following the beat of anyone else's drum, but I do want to know the people around you, the friends, the family. Did people believe in your journey with this show from the beginning? Do you come from a family that kind of sees and understands it, or did it need to be tangible? How has that worked out for you?
Wow, nobody's ever asked me this before. Good job.
I mean, it's interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. Um, your first question was, do I want to live in the heart of the city?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, because
No,
okay,
no.
okay.
My desired ultimate living nirvana would be Denver, Colorado. Now I realize that for what I'm specifically doing in my life, there's probably not a whole ton of entertainment avenues that there are in the heart of the city out in Denver, Colorado. But that's why I said my ultimate living desire, which means when, maybe I'm retired, maybe I'm settled down, maybe, whatever the case may be, when I'm just done, I want to live in Denver, Colorado. New York can be challenging. I'm like right there.
Oh,
I'm
so
New Jersey still, but I'm
you don't love New York like I do.
probably not.
Oh, see,
Probably not.
I'm the Californian who spent about 7 years there. I was in Weehawken, New Jersey for a little,
Oh,
Harlem for
you know where
four.
Sea Caucus is?
I believe so. Yeah,
Right,
I was there for a
right.
very little. Harlem for 4 years, Bushwick, Ridgewood, all those areas. Um, but for me, it was always heaven. To me, like that's what's fascinating about your backdrop. I know you're a New Jersey guy, but right, you are a New Jersey guy. That's you. That's where you
Yeah.
grew up.
Mhm.
But then when you put a New York City background, I was like, does he also have the fascination of the city like I do? I think some people either have it or they don't. To me, that's my Denver. Like I don't have, it's a hard city and it can run you down, but what you get out of it to me is so magical. It always brings out the best of me. That's what's weird about it. It's like my perfect yin yang. It could be challenging, but it kind of steps me up to like be my best version of myself. So I really like it. But to your Denver comment, what's funny though, you can kind of maybe do things independently now in a way that you couldn't before. That's something to think about. When we came up before and there was no social media, you were restricted to the big cities if your dreams were in alignment. But who's to say, this might just be a preliminary show for you. You might do something different, you might pivot, and that could be the next big thing, Joe Rogan
Right.
who. And at that point you do it on your own, and there's something very gratifying in that. And I've seen both sides of it. I was always, unfortunately, because there was no other option, I was always a 9 days a week worth of work, no sleeping, and I was always for the company. And sadly, those companies, these radio stations, would eat me up and spit me out. And now it took me a long time to get to wanting to do digital content on my own. But the only benefit that keeps me going a lot of the times is that if I do succeed, and when I succeed, I can have any type of life that I choose. For me, it happens to be New York is the greatest, but I'm also from LA, and there's some nice places in LA too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah.
No, the idea of like working for yourself or working on your own time is something that I've kind of fallen in love with. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, I'm still like doing the school thing. So, but as far as like working, like this is what I do. This is what I do
Yeah.
year round, and like ultimately, it's up to me. Like when I want to show up on time, I don't have a boss telling me like come bring me coffee at 6 in the morning, and I don't have a professor like come. We got class at 9 a.m. when it comes to this.
Mhm.
So I very much enjoy being my own boss, for better or for worse, because with that, I'm ultimately going to be my harshest critic, and I'm ultimately going to be on myself harder than anybody else would be. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because I hold myself to a very high standard with what I feel should be done or shouldn't be done. So,
Mhm.
mhm.
Now, to the question about the support,
Yeah.
did you come from a gigantic family who loved the arts and were like, go for it? Or was this something you had to go out on a limb and sort of do on your own and bring a tangible bit of success for them to kind of understand it?
I have an extremely large family. Like for to put it into perspective, just on my mom's side alone, I have 21 cousins.
Oh, okay.
So big family. As far as like the art of what I do, I've taken a very drastically different approach, I would say, compared to like the norm. Um, Usually, like the thing with my family, like they've gone on to either be like school teachers or like dabbling in like sports coaching and stuff like that. Whereas like the entertainment route, the interviewing route, broadcasting route, communications route had never been tapped into until like me. So that was definitely a navigation system that I had to take on sort of on my own. So like I would say when I started this, like nobody as far as like in my inner circle, family and friends, um, knew that I was really going to be starting this. And I would honestly say, is the sad truth is, and I said this, I had an interview with like Susie. She had me as a guest on Brain Candy. I told her this as well. The sad reality is, a lot of people out there just aren't going to be happy seeing you happy or succeeding.
Mm,
And that's why I keep a lot of what I do in the dark until it's finished. Like I really just do what I have to do and put it out and then just fade away. Because I feel like the more and more you talk to someone about something and say it doesn't happen, then they're glad to see you kind of falter.
yeah.
So I would say in the beginning, there was not a ton of, support garnering
Mm.
my way. And since then, I would say I've at the least gained respect to where like it's become clear like you may not like know what I'm doing, but you respect me to the point where you see what I've done from afar and you can't help but appreciate what I've been able to accomplish, I guess.
That and they could probably see how happy you are doing it. I mean, that's got to be
Yeah,
something
I mean
too.
that's what I'm saying. Throw me a bone, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I like to stay on the good side of people, you know what I mean?
I was quite against doing it. Like I said, coming from radio, I wanted to stick in traditional media, and had lots of successes over the years. But I was like against it, against it, against it. And then the only thing that became the most amazing when I did start it was that I was like, oh wow, I fell in love with all these other elements. The design element, like the how I'm going to put my show together element, which was similar to what we did in regular radio too. But I guess honestly, I hate to say it, not having somebody chew you out and tell you how to be the best version of you. Now there's some goodness in that when you have bosses that kind of want to sit with your work and you guys listen to it together and become better. So I'm always open for like with my close colleagues, like
Hmm.
to better each other. But in terms of like working for somebody and they're like, let's make the best Mike Lewis, and you're just like, I know how to make the best of me. Let's work together as a partnership almost. And a lot of those older jobs weren't doing it. So I don't shit on traditional media ever because I still have giant dreams of being on like late night talk shows
Hmm.
or let's get Drew Barrymore out of there and I'll take that. I'll take that slot. But all of it is fun, and you can see that the fun is coming through your face when you do these interviews. You are super serious. We could tell you are a very serious guy, but every once in a while you smile and have fun. This is my last question. This is just a fun little casting thing. So we have New Orleans homecoming. This is the third homecoming. Let's mix some shows together. So on MTV, they have the Jersey Shore family vacation. If you were to cast, let's say 5 to 7 people, let's say seven,
Seven.
seven people for the real world family vacation, who do you choose and where will they go?
Ooh.
I'll
So
play
this,
the game too because this is not going to be easy. And then once you do this, we're done.
so this is almost like a road rules in a way.
Yeah, but the only thing is, it's still in a house because it's like a family, like
Okay.
Jersey Shore family
But
vacation,
are they staying in one location at all times?
staying in one location,
Okay.
very Jersey Shore-ish. It's more just like in the house partying for the most
Oh, all
part.
right.
But who are the seven most interesting people?
All right. Well, we're putting Julie in that house.
She has earned, I don't know what the heck title, but this New Orleans has been a mess with her.
We're gonna do. All right. We're gonna do Julie. Can I use like road rulers that?
Yeah, let's use real world and road rules only. No fresh meat.
So if somebody debuted on road rules, they can still put them on this, right?
Yeah, let's open it up there.
We're gonna put Julie on this thing. Um, we're gonna put Coral, Cara Zavaleta,
Oh, from Road Rules. Yes. Okay. Yep.
just because I have some vested interest there. And no, I'm joking. Um, um, I'm thinking if I want to go with 4 girls or 4 guys here.
Yeah, that's where it gets tough.
Yeah.
So you have 3 girls right now.
Yeah. All right. I'll figure out 3 guys before I decide the final one. All right.
Mhm.
So those are the 3.
So
And
this is
then
our
these are,
hypothetical real world Road Rules family vacation like Jersey Shore. He's got 3 female cast members so far.
this is probably
There's no right
Edwards.
answer, really.
Probably David Edwards. Probably
Oh, recent David. Yeah, from
from
Venice.
LA.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, David
Do you
from
remember
LA.
when he got spit on by Puck at the
Bud
challenge?
Park.
Yeah.
Now you have me tempted, but I feel like they're both similar character
Yeah.
arcs, so I don't. I'm trying to like, divvy
Yeah,
the
you got to
wealth
pick the
here.
vulnerable. You got to pick the
Yeah.
crybaby. You got to pick the scholastically smart or athletic. All these things. Casting is
Um,
not easy.
I'm gonna put Dunbar in that house.
Dunbar from
Sydney.
Denver.
Sydney.
Oh, Sydney. Sydney. Okay.
We're gonna put
Wow.
we're gonna put Dunbar in there. Um,
So that's a total of 5 so far. No, 4.
yeah, yeah, Dunbar. This is very challenging.
And if you're checking out the program here, you are welcome to drop in the comments who would be your 7 people out of Real World and Road Rules as a family vacation. Who would you pick in the house?
I'm gonna put Shane
Okay.
Landrum,
That's the one that was on Road Rules.
Campus Crawl. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna put Shane there. And this is where we get this is where it gets challenging.
You don't have to finish, but it's a fun game to think about. And with the streaming platforms, you never know what other shows they're going to spin off. I mean, MTV, I think, has a version of Angelina competing against other party animals to try to win some competition now. So the streaming is getting out of hand. So I was like, let me make a fun casting game. And by the way, streaming Paramount Plus, if you guys need a show, just hire me. I mean, I will make a fucking show. What the hell?
And we're gonna put this is very challenging.
It's okay. You don't have to answer that. I just wanted to do that. I would choose Heather B. She's
Okay.
coming in. I'd bring in Heather B. I'd bring Kara Khan. I'm gonna do 4 women and 3 men. I'm gonna stick with real worlders. So Heather B, Kara Khan. I'm gonna bring in a rare appearance from Jamie Chung. Okay, we're gonna be able to get her for the series. We're gonna pay her worth. Surprisingly, I'm not gonna pick Coral because she's gonna have another show. But my 4th girl is gonna be not even somebody I really enjoyed. Who was the Austin girl? I didn't like Austin as a cast, but who was the hairdresser? What was her name?
Ooh.
Was it Rachel? No, Rachel was the other girl.
Lacey?
Lacey. We're gonna put Lacey with that group. The 3 guys are gonna be Ace from Paris.
Paris.
It's gonna be. Oh God, I wanted to pick another girl. I just thought of her from London. Who's our London girl?
Kat?
No, it's not Kat.
Jacinda?
The one that used to sing a little bit. She sang also. She had yeah. Anyways, I can't remember her name right at the moment. Anyways, for guys, I said Ace. I'm gonna put in Tyler. I'm gonna put in, and I'm gonna put Theo from Chicago in.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Theo. Do I have one more? I think I have one more guy, right?
Tyler, Theo, Ace.
Yeah. The
Arthur.
last guy I would put in for this casting opportunity would be, let's see, It's so funny because now once you start thinking of people, they become archetypes, unfortunately, because that's how they casted the show so many years
Yeah.
ago. So I don't want to do something too similar. Let's see. Was there anyone interesting on Key West?
Svetlana?
Was she on Key West?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Paula?
Jose was his name.
Jose?
Let's put Jose on the show. Let's put the some no namers, not no namers to be mean, but like let's put some people and let's kick up some dust and let's have a great show. That's who I would put on my
Just
show.
because you said that, maybe I'll interview him in like a week. And if
know.
I do, you're gonna be the first one to hear that.
Anyways, this was just nonsense for us to just talk about a bunch of real world and road rule stuff and a little bit about your career. Like you said, you're just kind of taking it easy breezy. You're not really mentioning anything set in stone, and you know you may pivot at some point, but you're having a great time now, and it shows. And congrats on all that. Did you have any questions for me?
When did you start this? Like just like the freelancing stuff.
So the last job that I had actually before the pandemic was involved in producing a podcast for VH1 through another company called Revolver Podcast. So I actually was at Viacom, both offices, the one on 42nd Street or off of 42nd Street and the one downtown. That ended as the pandemic started. And it was basically like I had been producing a show for someone else, you know, but it's always great to do that because you get your paycheck. And so what I ended up doing, and then the pandemic shut us all up. So I was like, oh man, I'm just going to keep my like schedule, I guess. And that's kind of how I did it. So I just stopped doing, let's say, a lot of hard work for someone else and getting a paycheck for it. And then I started doing a lot of hard work for me without a paycheck at the beginning. So that was the hardest part. But for anyone that is trying to get into it, it's like it just gets easier and better as it goes. That doesn't mean every episode's good. You do fuck up a lot.
Yeah.
Or I do. I'm old enough to have a bad attitude. When I was your age, dude, oh shit, I was pleasant as a peach. Now I just talk shit all the time. I'm a grumpy 41-year-old, and so it's been interesting to bring that much authenticity to my show. When I was in my 20s, I was trying to arc it in such a way to do what success needed you to do. And I don't know, I just let it rip now. Sometimes I'm like, dang, I'm really shitting on the millennials. I don't mean to, but I just let it rip. I think most people have understood that it's me. And I'm not going to stop. You know, I've done a little bit of reality TV over the years. TLC Network, I did a show, Fuse TV. I was on the VJ search. So I love talking about it because I have a perspective, not just in radio, but from like having cameras in my face as well. Granted, my shows were never this big, but imagine if they were. So it's just fun, man. It's just all fun. All right. Any last thoughts for you, or I guess that's it.
No, I just thank you for obviously having me on here and appreciating what I do.
All right. Well, go and continue to check out Mike Lewis podcast. He specializes in interviews with real world and road rules and the challenge and all that stuff. Also has an affinity for Nickelodeon as well, so we might see more interviews there, I guess. I don't know. And you never know where he pivots, but you have a great focus. Mental health is big on your mind, so you take breaks, which is important. And with that type of game plan, I think you'll be a huge success if you want to.
Thank you. Well, I
All
hope
right.
so.
Well, that wraps it up. That's it. That's it for me. I will talk to you, Mike, another time.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.